What's up, everyone? Mnar, Adley here. I'm the founder and director of MIT Press News, and I am joined today by Greg Stoker for a very impromptu last-minute live stream. Greg is on his way to Gaza on the veteran flotilla attached to the Sumoud flotilla. He's a former Army Ranger. He served 4 combat deployments to Afghanistan, and now he's an anti-war activist and organizer and journalist with MIT Press. Greg, thank you for being here today.
Glad to be here. We're just waiting at a rally point for a couple other ships, so nothing to do but yap into a microphone and answer any questions you guys might have.
Well, we appreciate you being, first of all, on this veteran flotilla, this veteran boat that is attached to the Sumoud flotilla. And just for some background, I'm sure a lot of people already know this context, but the Sumoud flotilla is the largest maritime mission to break the siege on Gaza. 55 boats representing 44 nations. And at this point, we have witnessed a genocide being live streamed in 4K. And the world has become aware that governments are failing us. International law has failed us. The UN has failed us. So we must take matters into our own hands. And so, Greg, this is obviously the largest maritime mission with 55 boats. And so this is a little bit different than the one boat sailing to Gaza to break the siege with carrying baby formula and food. So tell us more about why this mission is so important.
Well, I mean, this mission is so important for 2 reasons. First, because the final solution is literally being enacted in Gaza right now. And because the sailing conditions in the Mediterranean, you can't really sail after like late September, especially under sail power, which a lot of these ships are. So it was like now or never. And yeah, it's the scale. The scale of it makes it more important. It's the most visually stunning example. It's the most logistically complex thing that these flotillas have attempted yet. And of course, again, it's the timing as well.
So I think a lot of people are curious to know more about the veteran flotilla. I mean, this is quite significant to see a boat full of veterans that you're leading. These are Americans that have served in the military before, like yourself, for active duties in Afghanistan. Tell me more about the boat and who's with you on this and how it was organized to join the Sumoud flotilla.
Well, I was actually brought on last minute to be the media lead for this boat, but because of complications, the person who brought me onto it had to drop out, and then I became lead organizer for this boat. We've got 8 veterans from different service branches and different occupations within the military, and we are doing this in a parallel action with other veterans organizations like About Face and Veterans for Peace, who will be doing direct action operations in the continental United States when this boat and other boats from the Freedom Flotilla, or the Sumoud Flotilla rather, are interdicted by Israeli naval forces. So basically we wanted to do this boat to kind of leverage our status in our grotesquely militarized society as veterans, because we are a protected class of citizens, in order to do a couple of things: add an extra degree of security and safety to the fleet, because we are a political bargaining chip, if that makes sense, and because we wanted to spread an intersectional message with our ship and the media messaging coming out of it, which is essentially like, whatever our government is willing to do to Palestinians, they're willing eventually to do to you. Like, whatever violence we do overseas, eventually, it actually happens pretty quickly, comes back home and is implemented by your own law enforcement and national security state on the citizens of the U.S. empire.
No doubt. And we have, simple examples. I wouldn't call them simple, but the basic examples of police brutality that we see taking place in our communities here in the United States, the militarization of police as well. And so I think a lot of people are also wondering, like, how is Israel going to deal with 55 boats this time? Because, as we said, one boat maybe is more manageable for them. But now we have this really beautiful image of 55 boats sailing to Gaza. I know that you posted that Israel's Ben Gvir has already threatened to arrest everybody on the boats and to seize the boats and turn them into police boats, which I thought that was really funny. But I mean, it's really no laughing matter. Yeah, tell us how is Israel going to react to 55 boats?
Okay, well, first of all, I mean, it's not a laughing matter, but I love my gallows humor, especially on these kind of dangerous operations. He should absolutely seize these boats and turn them into a naval police force. Okay, like our boat doesn't even have bow thrusters, so it can't even dock without assistance. So they should definitely turn this into a naval force. You see, this flotilla was cobbled together at the last moment. This has been in the making for like 3 months, which is insane. The logistics have been very difficult, obviously, because we don't have a military infrastructure or a government tax base where we can allocate funds for this. This has been a largely grassroots movement, happening at breakneck speed. And right now we're dealing with, logistical issues with the flotilla. Getting out of port was challenging. There was a lot of bureaucratic warfare happening to pressure the Spanish government and the Barcelona port authorities to make sure we couldn't launch. And it's because we have to do what our governments refuse to do without any infrastructure, just, trying to our best to make it happen. But yeah, okay, so I've been like ranting all day, but basically, it's 50 boats, 50 plus boats. And again, I don't expect all of them to make it there. The Mediterranean is a challenging sea at this time of year. Like the first night out was really choppy. People were throwing up over the side. The entire inside cabin was just like strewn with like pots that fell out of the secured kitchen cabinets, and it was banging up against the walls. So this is going to be like 20 days of a challenging crossing, especially since some of these boats are so small. Of course, each boat has aid. This is a humanitarian aid mission, and the mission is not to like relieve the people of Gaza with this act, but to establish a humanitarian corridor where future boats with more aid than our ships can carry would be established. That's ideally hopefully what happened is what's going to happen. But in terms of Israeli naval interdiction, if it is 55 boats, and assuming 55 boats make it, and assume 55 boats make it at the same time, which is tricky even for professional like naval forces and merchant marines. So we'll see how that turns out. We'll probably have to adjust every day in an ongoing dynamic environment. But Israel's Navy is like the 50th largest in the world. They only have 60 vessels in their entire Navy. 60. It's pretty tiny. 5 of those are submarines. A few of those are going to be posted in the Persian Gulf, trying to do like signal intelligence collection against Iran and other people in the region or other organizations in the region. They have 7 missile cruisers and then 45 patrol boats. They have an entire patrol detachment based out of the port of Eilat in the Red Sea. So those won't even be involved in the mission. So yeah, it's kind of unprecedented both in the coalition's history and in the Israeli Navy's history to kind of come to grips with this type of operation. So Israel's very much a rogue actor. We are currently developing threat assessments as new information presents itself, and we're going to go ahead with the operation.
Yeah, it sounds like there's going to be a lot of challenges to get into Gaza. Israel has been starving Gaza, not now just during the genocide, but for decades, preventing very basic things from entering Gaza, like crayons and humanitarian supplies, and has been very limited in allowing medical personnel and also journalists from entering Gaza. So Israel will do whatever it wants to do and whatever it takes to try to prevent this from succeeding, which is very unfortunate. We saw from the last flotilla, Israel seized all of the members of the ship, arrested them, sent people back home, even abused some of the flotilla members. And so you guys so far have dealt with some rainy conditions. And as you said, some boats have already had to turn back from the sea conditions. But you've also been dealing with Israeli drones above you. Can you talk about that?
Okay, so first of all, that's not confirmed. Actually, I can actually, since I have admin uh, privileges on the stream, I actually have a video of the drones that were overhead. They buzzed my ship in a very close orbit. So hang on, and I know this is live, but I'm going to pull it up real quick. I think it was this one. Sorry, guys. Yeah, so I'm actually not completely convinced that those were Israeli drones yet. I think they could have been part of the Spanish Coast Guard, seeing a bunch of ragtag ships sailing in the same direction. They may have thought it was like something to do with migration or illegal migration, so they put eyes on it. Once they determined what it was, they peeled off within like 30 minutes. However, when it comes to drones, what we definitely expect going forward is after we've kind of passed the port of Tunis to actually have Israel or Israeli affiliated drones above the formation at all times, kind of as an intimidation technique. So what we're going to see, because the bureaucratic warfare didn't work to stop us from being able to launch from Spanish ports, only Barcelona. Now we're going to see psychological operations. So right now we're in a phase where they're going to see if the flotilla itself will just fail on its own and implode, because they really do not want to deal with this problem right now. They're not in a good PR position right now. They kind of boxed in rhetorically and have nowhere to go. Most people, especially major outlets all across the global north, are now saying finally, hey, it's genocide, it's enforced famine. And what we're doing is actually under the cruise right, protected under international law. And of course, I don't think that really exists anymore, but they can't pretend to uphold or follow the law and interdict these vessels. We are a civilian mission. We have no weapons, only humanitarian aid. Yes, it's a small amount for a lot of ships because we don't have a lot of funds to access to make this thing happen, but we're going to try anyways. So if they interdict us, yes, it's a breach of international maritime law. They're going to try. But in the meantime, if this doesn't collapse, and it won't, so they're going to have to deal with it. So as we make the crossing across the central and into the eastern Mediterranean, we're going to be dealing with a lot of psychological operations. It's already started. As you can see, their attack dog, who has been convicted, the only person convicted of terrorism in this conversation, Itamar Ben-Gvir, he said, yes, we're all going to be put into terror prisons for long-term detention in order to deter any other activists or humanitarians from attempting something like this ever again. And, of course, turn these into police boats. Obviously, Ben-Gvir spouts a whole lot of nonsense, and it's not yet an Israeli government position, but we expect that it will be if this coalition continues, which it will. So not just threats of long-term detention or violence. We think that, or at least I think, that we might see stuff that happens in Gaza to journalists where, some intelligence officer will call a journalist's cell phone and engage with them and try to intimidate them. We might also see doxing of human rights activists. Personally, for me, jokes on them because they already doxed the last four of my social, my address, and my driver's license. So that's been an ongoing identity problem since that happened last year. So they'll probably do that kind of stuff. And then all the way from drones to actually having a naval warship, like one of their missile cruisers, escort us towards Palestine. So every day you'd be looking at the horizon, looking at an Israeli warship, hurling abuse at you over the loudspeaker. We're kind of preparing ourselves for this kind of psychological warfare going forward because they want to divide and conquer and make this whole thing implode, scare people. Once one boat pulls off, they're hoping other boats might pull off. But I don't think that's going to happen.
Well, and what have you heard from the actual U.S. military? I mean, you'd think that they would be concerned and want to protect this veteran flotilla. Of course, there's 55 boats, but you'd think that they would have made a statement of some sort to protect and stand with the veterans that are opposing this genocide, who are carrying humanitarian aid heading to Gaza, you'd think.
Well, you would think, but, as a veteran activist, I've learned that if you don't toe the party line, you kind of like lose your veteran status socially. You're accused of stolen valor. You're called mentally ill, and it's very sad because you have so much PTSD that you forgot what you stood for. Just things like that to discredit you. I don't expect a statement from the U.S. military at all, even if we're detained. I don't think it's going to happen because they don't. It's 8 veterans, but there are parallel actions planned, and this is what's cool about the flotilla, and this is how you can get involved in it if you want to. So personally, for the veteran boat, once we get interdicted, if we get interdicted, which I suspect we will, Veterans for Peace and About Face and other independent veterans organizations are going to do independent direct actions when that happens, because we want to say that this is a transnational struggle. So, like, yes, we're doing it in Palestine, but also we're also fighting for the same thing in the continental United States as well. And that will be happening with all other boats and other delegations from 44 other countries. So it's actually quite an impressive and large effort that we're engaged in.
Absolutely, it's quite large, and I think a lot of people on the other side who have felt like a bit hopeless watching this genocide in 4K on their smartphones, they feel inspired that, hey, look at these people that have taken it upon themselves to carry the aid directly to Gaza. I mean, at this point, the governments have failed us, international law has failed us, the UN has failed us. And so at this point, people have to realize that we have to take matters into our own hands. I mean, we literally have to lock our arms together and either sail there in a mass mobilization like you guys are doing, or march to Gaza. Of course, we're seeing countries like Egypt crack down on all sort of like organizing and activism to prevent that. But imagine if all of the people around the world who wanted to help Gaza, who wanted to take a stand, locked arms and just literally marched to Gaza. I mean, that's how much of the British were taken down inside of India during their occupation. It's like people just standing together.
Yeah, I will say that the sea route is a lot easier. I mean, naval operations are more complex than land operations, but there is international maritime law. You're not actually crossing through other countries' borders, so they can't really put their own security forces on you, which is one of the reasons why the march to Gaza was such a mess. But I think the real messaging that we want to do with the vet boat is to be like, you know what, you would want that to happen. You would think that people would witness the annihilation of another group of people live streamed and be like, okay, I need to stop being at brunch right now and get involved. Yeah. But unfortunately, and I don't necessarily blame people too much for this because it was done intentionally to them as kids, like the propaganda from post 9/11 world, the normalization of war in the Middle East or West Asia over the 20 years of the global war on terror. A lot of people think like, yeah, it's horrible. It's horrible, but like, I can't do anything about it. This is what always happens over there. And yeah, I don't want money going to Israel, but what can I do about it? So I think one of the things that we want to accomplish and leverage our backgrounds is to basically send a message of intersectionality. Because let's face it, when it comes to the pro-Palestine movement, there's just not enough of us. There's just not enough people. There's really not. So bringing in people from other movements, ICE abolition, prisons, environmentalists, and kind of explaining to them, or like people on the anti-authoritarian right who maybe have some disagreeable politics, but they want this to end, can all be brought in under a big tent that the Democratic Party cannot accommodate because they are completely complicit in this as well. So, yeah, this is a grassroots movement trying to craft internationally an independent grassroots movement from governments that are completely incompetent, inept, or unwilling to put a stop to this insanity.
And finally, Greg, I want people to hear more from you as somebody who has served in Afghanistan several times. How is it that you went from an active duty member soldier to now somebody who is an anti-war activist? I mean, now you're boarding one of the largest maritime missions on a veteran boat to break the siege on Gaza. How did this journey happen? For those who don't know.
Oh man. Well, I did 4 combat deployments in a special operations unit. I witnessed firsthand Obama's drone strike policy, and I can say categorically that didn't have the intelligence to be dropping the people we were. And there was also something really reminiscent advice that we were doing. Like there was not necessarily a spoken quota, but you were expected to go out and hit high value targets: Taliban, Haqqani, sub commanders, Al Qaeda operatives. But we really didn't have the intelligence to be conducting as many operations as we were. So they were just like, all right, well, if you don't have any solid intelligence, can't hit known targets, hit likely targets, or suspected targets. So we spent a lot of time hitting just completely unaffiliated homes, compounds, scaring the absolute living daylights out of people. And it was embarrassing. It was bad. And I got out, did one contract, 4 deployments, and I went to Columbia University and started learning about like colonialism and imperialism and all the isms that constitute our basically very, very sick society that we live in the United States currently. And I don't want to live in it anymore. You know, because wherever you go, we are still the unipolar empire. We're declining, but everywhere you go, most of the world, you know, the shadow of the U.S. empire falls over it. And this is where I was born. I live here, or I'm not currently there right now, but I don't know. It's where I live, and I just feel like I can't not do anything or just be at brunch while an entire people are annihilated, because that's how it works. Whatever the government is willing to do to Palestinians, they're willing to do to you, just slowly working its way up from the most marginalized groups to white people who have the wrong political beliefs. And that's not exactly a world I feel comfortable living in. So, yeah.
Yeah, well, you know, we applaud you obviously for taking this moral stance against this genocide and all U.S. wars. And I think one of the most common things that we've been hearing since this genocide happened is, you know, that Israel must be held accountable. But I think people forget that Israel is a proxy state of the U.S. empire. It would not exist. It would not be able to get away with this genocide, with this starvation campaign, without the backing, arming, and funding, and thumbs upping from U.S. politicians here, from the U.S. empire. The same thing in Yemen. You know, Yemen right now, there's 23 million people starving, and Saudi Arabia would not have been able to enforce an illegal international blockade on Yemen for for the past decade without the backing of the United States, without the arms from the United States, without the United States, you know, U.S. military jets, you know, refueling Saudi jets mid-air to drop those bombs on Yemeni schools and hospitals and grain silos. So what Israel is doing, what all of these wars have done, is just really, they are representation of the U.S. empire.
Yeah, in other words, I like to say that Israel is an extension of the U.S. empire to destabilize the region and wage adventurous wars in order to carve up West Asia into vassal states that will allow Western capitalists to exploit their people and resources. And it's kind of confusing for some people because Israel, unlike any other colony in colonial history, which I studied, has an unprecedented amount of influence over our government. But it's not the system that determines it. You know, without that support, Israel would not exist.
And that's exactly the lens in which MIT Press provides all of its journalism and investigations. This is modern day colonialism. It is a divide and conquer tactic. The end agenda, or the agenda, is to break up these states like we are seeing now.
Syria.
What we have in Syria. Yeah, I was going to say Syria is like the perfect example of where this agenda is taking place. But anyways, we thank you and we applaud you, Greg, for taking this moral stance and for this, you know, for your courage. And we will be watching not just the veteran boat, but also all of the boats that are heading towards Gaza. And we're excited to see what will come out of this. But we're also, you know, we're going to be watching the way Israel reacts to this maritime attempt to break the siege.
Yeah, and I'll
Did
just
you wanna
advise
add anything
everybody.
else?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I just want to advise everybody that a lot of these boats are under sail. We're only going to be doing 4 or 5 knots a day, so it's going to take a minute. So this will be an ongoing story that I will continue to cover from here.
Okay, Greg, we'll keep watching, and best of luck to you and your team.
All right. Talk later.
Thank
See
you.
y'all. Bye-bye.